Picking the wrong visitor attraction can turn your summer of memories into a summer of nightmares. And it's so easy to do when you have a child with special needs, because most of these attractions simply weren't built with our children in mind. To ease you into the summer, I'm providing you a list of attractions that you can trust to give you an inclusive and accessible experience. So keep listening to find out more. Welcome to the Zen Parent Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Esther Freeman, and I teach parents the principles and techniques for how my daughter went from 5 or 6 violent meltdowns a day to virtually 0. In this weekly podcast, I'll be giving you a whole range of tips so you can have a calmer family life. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. This is the third in my summer special series. The last 2 episodes were about how to help your child manage the summer holidays when they're out of their usual routine. Lots of techniques there and tips on how to help them with that. And last week's episode was how to manage your own mental health. So if you are finding yourself in a crisis, either due to your child's behaviour or your own needs, please go back and listen to episode 9 and 10. Within those, you'll find some free resources that help with stress and overwhelm. And just in case you are in a crisis right now, I'll put a link to those in the show notes here so you can just get quick access to those and start dealing with those problems. But I am for this episode going to focus on something a little bit lighter, but it has a serious core. So many visitor attractions just aren't built with our children in mind. And I had this experience very recently when visiting the Paddington Bear experience at County Hall in London. Now, it's a little bit vague on the website about what it was. It just calls itself an immersive interactive experience. But, you know, my daughter likes Paddington Bear and we've been to interactive exhibitions before, so I kind of figured it was going to be like that. And I just thought it's an opportunity for her to play and take some photos, and it would probably be fun. Well, it wasn't. So, first of all, when we got there, we were told to turn up 15 minutes before our allotted time. Now, because I'm not always best at time management, we didn't manage to do that. We did get there at our allotted time, and I was actually really glad that we hadn't arrived there 15 minutes early, because when we arrived, we went down into this space, which was kind of like Paddington Station. It was very cute. And then we were told that we had to wait for our train, and our train was going to be 15 or 20 minutes. So if we'd got there 15 minutes early, we would have been waiting half an hour or maybe more. Now, my daughter can't cope with waiting, nor can quite a lot of neurodivergent children. So that was the first thing. I mean, fortunately, we did only have like a 15-20 minute wait, but then we hit against the second problem, which was the fact that the waiting area that we were in was blaring out this really loud music, and there were all these performers dancing and singing, and I just looked at my daughter and she had eyes like saucers, and I said, "Do you need to get out of here?" And she said, "Yeah." So I went up to the guy by the so-called train and I said, "Can we get on this one? We can't wait to ours. This is too noisy here. It's not appropriate for my daughter." And he said, "No, because we have limits on the number of people who are allowed in the train at any one time. But go over there and speak to the people by the cloakroom and they can help you." So we followed the instructions. We had to go through about 3 people before we found someone who could help us. And I have to say, the guy who took it upon himself to find us a quiet space to wait was lovely. I mean, actually, none of the people were horrible. They were just a bit thoughtless. And this guy said, "I will find you a quiet space," but he didn't really have one, quite honestly. And it ended up with me going, "I tell you what, we'll just go and stay in the shop." My daughter loves a gift shop. It was relatively quiet in there at that point. So I said, "Look, we'll just go into the gift shop and wait. What time should we come out?" And he said, "I will come and find you." And absolute fair play to him. He did exactly that. He came and got us and we got onto the train. Then we got onto this train, which wasn't actually a train. It was just another opportunity for more performances and more singing and people talking quite loudly. And my daughter just said, "What are we doing on here? I just want to get into the exhibition," because that's what we thought we were going into. And we sat in this place, we couldn't get out, it was pretty hot. There's all this stuff going on that my daughter really wasn't into. It was kind of like interactive theatre stuff. And also the other thing, it was half empty. So it's like, why couldn't we have come on an earlier one? I don't believe the others were all completely packed if bars 15 minutes later was half empty. Anyway, finally the doors open and we got out and we just went straight into another interactive theatre performance. Now, if they'd said on the website, this is immersive interactive theatre, I would not have bought tickets because my daughter hates theatre. Not mad on it myself either. That day, I taught my daughter the word insufferable, but that wasn't really the biggest problem with it. The biggest problem was that they would take you into a room, and they were lovely. They were like little stage sets, and the props and everything were great, and there were activities to do in the room. But first of all, you had to stand there and go through this whole performance that the actors did. And my daughter was just going, I just want to play. Why won't they shut up? Why can't I just play? Because obviously my child's quite impulsive. You stick her in a room with toys, she doesn't then want to go and sit and listen to someone doing this performance. And so she was standing at the back of the room scowling. She was wearing her sunflower lanyard. I'll be talking about sunflower lanyards later, but it's an indication she has a hidden disability. So this child sitting at the back of the room wearing a sunflower lanyard and scowling. Nobody came up to us and asked us whether we were okay. We couldn't get out of these rooms. No one asked us whether we'd like to go into a quieter room, whether we needed to get out, whether we needed to take another route. So I just assumed we couldn't. And so we went through, I can't remember how many there were. There were quite a lot. All these different rooms, about 4 I think there were. And we went through this same thing in each room. And then we actually got to this sort of jungle. It's meant to be like the Peruvian jungle. And actually my daughter really liked that room, but there were meant to be these activities. She didn't want to do the activities because she just wanted to do her own thing because, she's a little bit demand avoidant. And then we were told we had to leave that room, but she was like, but I want to stay here and play. I like this room and there are less annoying actors in it. But we couldn't, we were moved on. So just for her, having all that control taken away from her was just really building up the stress. Eventually we get out and we were able to go to the gift shop, and I bought a little gift to kind of make up to the fact that it had been a bit of a rubbish experience. Now, as I say at the top of this show, my daughter used to have 5 or 6 violent meltdowns a day. If I had taken her to that experience, say 5 years ago or something, absolute guaranteed meltdown, either in the place or when we had got out. Fortunately, my daughter is much better at managing her emotions now. We were able to have a conversation about it and vent to each other about how rubbish it was. She was much more emotionally regulated. I could see she was getting stressed, but she was able to keep that stress to a manageable level. But as I said, 5 years ago, if I'd taken her in when she was 5 or 6 years old, absolute guaranteed meltdown. And I felt really cross. And so I came home and I actually wrote on the Facebook page of our parent carer forum to just warn people, because I didn't want other people to go through this. And I did actually look on the website for the Paddington Bear Experience, and they did actually have a section on accessibility. It took me a while to find it, and I certainly didn't see it before I went. And they say on that there are escape routes, that their staff are trained to recognise the sunflower lanyard. Well, all I can say is my daughter was wearing hers and nobody came to offer us help. Nobody told us that there were escape routes. We just thought we were stuck. And I found that quite stressful as a parent who was worrying that maybe my child would have a meltdown. I mean, she didn't. She was, as I said, she's come a long way, but there's always that nagging concern. And so it ended up being a really stressful experience. So this is what a day out can turn out to be like. And so I wanted to share with you today some places that I think will give you a much better experience than that. And I just hope if someone from the Paddington Bear Experience is watching this, that you will put some changes in to make it a better experience for neurodivergent children, because quite honestly, right now it's a bit of a nightmare. But I'm going to give you a list of places where it won't be a nightmare, or hopefully won't be a nightmare. Obviously, there's no guarantees with any of these. Someone can go and just hit a bad member of staff, or just something else. The planets aren't quite aligned, and it may not be the perfect experience. But these places that I recommend, either I have been there or another parent has been there and recommended it to me, with the exception of the last two, which are Wales and Scotland, just because it is a little bit of an English, south of England biased list, because that's where I live. So I did want to look at the other nations, and so I have just gone online for some recommendations there. But let's get on with the list. So the first one on my list isn't actually, it's a place, it's a thing, and that is the Carers Pass, the free Carers Pass. Now, lots of big attractions nowadays will give you a free ticket if you are accompanying a disabled person. So that was either a disabled adult or disabled child. You do often need some proof, and that could be your DLA letter, your Disability Living Allowance Benefit letter, or your PIP letter, Personal Independence Payments Benefit letter. But if you don't have either of those two, you could look at bringing something else, maybe a letter from your GP, maybe a diagnostic letter. I have to say, a lot of places I go to never actually ask me for evidence. Some do, and some are quite specific on what they will accept. But if you don't have those, just take something else along. Usually you can just buy the free Carers Pass online, or order it, because you don't buy it because you're not paying. And then go along. I can tell you that pretty much all of the big visitor attractions in London, the museums, the galleries, I have to say the Paddington Pear experience, I think I did get a free Carers Pass for that. They do the free Carers Pass. Also, National Trust and English Heritage do it. Now, I have to say, it's not very well advertised on either of their websites, but all I can say is all the ones I've been to so far, I've managed to get a free Carers Pass for them. So I'm assuming that they do have a national policy on it, although it's not very clear on their website. They could do better on that. So yeah, get your free Carers Pass, because it can save you a lot of money, and things are very tight now, especially for disabled families. And I know that when I came out of that Paddington Bear experience, I was thinking, well, at least I only paid for my daughter's ticket, so it made that bad day out feel a bit better, because at least I hadn't wasted quite as much money as I would have otherwise. So that's the free Carers Pass. Point number 2 is also a thing, not a place, but it's a very important thing. I mentioned it before, the sunflower lanyard. So this has been a scheme that's been in place for a little while now, and it's basically a lanyard with sunflowers on, and it indicates that the wearer has a hidden disability of some kind. Now, it started off mainly at airports, as far as I'm aware. That's where I first came across it, and that's where I first got my sunflower lanyard. But it's been growing and increasing in understanding and prominence. Staff are now getting trained on what to do, how to respond to someone who's wearing a sunflower lanyard. So I think it's a really great scheme that's really growing, and that's a really good thing. So if you are going to an attraction, get a sunflower lanyard, wear it. It might help you jump queues. It might help you just when you're asking for help, people will understand why you're asking for help. And it just gives an indication to the staff at the attraction, without you having to sit there and explain why you need this provision. They will just see it. As I said, I got my sunflower lanyard from an airport. I know our local parent carer forum provide them to people, but there's also a website, and I will put a link to that in the show notes, so you can just order it online. I think there might be a small charge, but it's not much, and they're really worth having. So one place that I did have a really great experience with the sunflower lanyard is point number 3 on my list, the Harry Potter studio tours. Generally, I would say this was a great experience for us, and I know that some friends of ours went with their autistic daughter, and they also had a really good experience there. The staff are really clearly well trained. They saw us wearing our sunflower lanyard. They come up to us and say, do you need any help? Do you need any adaptations? Is there anything we can do to make sure that you have a good experience? They were really proactive. It was great. And also when they're again, like with that Paddington Bear experience, at the beginning of the studio tours, you have to go through certain rooms and have to sit through a film. And my daughter really didn't want to sit through the film. So I just went up to a member of staff, and there was staff everywhere as well. It's really well staffed. And I just went up to this staff member and I said, she doesn't want to watch the film. Can anyone help us? And they said, absolutely. And they got someone, and they took us through all these back routes. We sort of went backstage. And so we could just skip it. There was no questions. There was no fussing. They got it. It was great. So that was really good. We didn't use it to jump queues. We didn't try. I did say to my daughter, because we were queuing up to do this photo thing with some broomsticks, and I did say, you know, if you can't tolerate this queue, I think they'd probably let us jump it. She didn't want to, so didn't get to try that out. But based on our other experiences from staff, I think there probably wouldn't have been a problem if we'd asked to do that. And the thing that my daughter loved best about the place was that they had a sensory room, and it was great. It was really lovely. So she did get a little bit overwhelmed. It is quite a big sensory experience there. There is lots of people. It's can be quite crowded, and so when just before lunch, I could see she was getting a little bit frazzled, and I said, shall we hunt out this sensory room? And she said she wanted to. And they only let one family in at a time, which I think is actually good, because then you've just got the space to yourself and you can really decompress. It did mean we had a little bit of a wait before we went in there. It wasn't too long though. Maybe in the height of summer that might be more of a problem. I can't remember when we went. I think it might have been. It was still in term time, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, we got into this sensory room. If you ask her now what the best thing of the Harry Potter studio tour room, it was the sensory room. She absolutely loved it. So yeah, all round, really great experience there, and I would definitely recommend that if you have a child with special needs, that you're looking for a accessible and inclusive day out. So that's number 3 on the list. Number 4 is Aldenham Country Park, which is just outside of London. Now this is something that I stumbled upon by chance, and it was the best accident ever, because it's such a magical place. So they have this Winnie the Pooh trail where you go through these woods and you can see Tigger's house and Pooh's house, and there's lovely little picnic areas, and there's a little stream. I remember my daughter just played by the stream for absolutely ages, just throwing in sticks and stones, and I remember just having this moment where I go, oh, this is what childhoods are made of. It's lovely. I mean, we did go on a day where the sunshine was out as well, which really helped, but I've been back since as well, because I loved it so much, and I saw that they had all these other resources. So they have like a petting zoo, they have ponies to ride, they have a Sen pavilion where they have all these activities on, these Sen friendly activities on. They have a fully accessible playground. I have to say it's the only playground I have ever been to that has a wheelchair accessible zip wire. It's amazing. And they also have camping, so if you wanted to stay there overnight, it's a really great place. I really recommend it. So that's Aldenham Country Park. So on to number 5 on our list, and that is Tate Modern. This might be one for slightly older children, or maybe you want to introduce your children to art early, but Tate Modern are really good for when they have their big shows along, having some quiet times when you can go along. So I know they've been running their Yoko Ono exhibition, which I went along with my daughter. It's really good, really fun. I can't remember when that finishes. I think it might be running part of the summer, and they have had some quiet times where you can go in without the crowds. They've also got Auntie McCall exhibition coming up, which I've booked tickets for, because again they're doing some quiet sessions. And not only are these sessions where there are less people around, they also have things like breakout rooms where you can go if you just need to kind of decompress, and they also have things like ear defenders that you can ask for, and of course those free carer passes. So Tate Modern, I would highly recommend those as a way to get a little bit of culture into your kids in an accessible and inclusive way. So point number 6 is Bewilderwood. Now, this was recommended to me by another parent, so I haven't been myself, but they said they had a great experience there, and it's very wheelchair accessible. So they said that wheelchair users go free, and it's just generally the facilities there are really wheelchair friendly, and they've got centres in Norfolk and Cheshire. So check those out, have a look at it online. I think again you can get your free carers pass, so well worth having a look at. Number 7 is riding for the disabled. So when I was a child and I went on family holidays, I could sometimes find them a bit of a struggle too. And I was a bit of a pony girl, and my way of just kind of getting a bit of a break from the whole stress of what family holidays could be like was to ask if we could find a local riding stables and if I could just do 1 or 2 riding sessions while we were on holiday. And so that was my kind of escape to place. Now, in the episode I did a few weeks ago about autistic girls, we talked about how horse riding or animals in general can often be the special interest of autistic girls. And so I would recommend having a look if you are having a staycation, holiday in this country. Have a look to see where the nearest Riding for the Disabled centre is for where you're staying, and that could be one of your activities for the week, because it might just give your autistic daughter or son, I'm not saying that boys aren't also into ponies, but it does tend to be a bit of a girl thing, but it might just give them that bit of kind of downtime and decompression where they can just engage in their special interest and just give them a sense of safety. And it's also just we talk about in NVR, because I'm an NVR informed parenting coach, we talk about reconciliation gestures, and these are things that you do for your child just to show them that your love is unconditional, that you're thinking of them. And I would say booking a session in for your pony obsessed daughter would be a wonderful reconciliation gesture if they are finding the holiday quite hard. So there are Riding for Disabled centres all over the country, so check out if there is one near to where you will be going on holiday this year. So number 8 on the list is the York Railway Museum. I didn't feel I could leave this one out because obviously there are so many railway enthusiasts amongst the autistic community, and I went many years ago with my autistic niece, and she was really digging all the Thomas the Tank Engine stuff. Now, I haven't been for a really long time, and I haven't been with my own daughter because my daughter wasn't born then. So I just had a look on their website. I can tell you that it's you're going to really get your railway rocks off if you do have a child who's into trains. It's got everything there. It's a big museum. It can get a little bit crowded, so I just thought I'd have a look at what they have, because if anyone should be moderating their services for the neurodivergent community, it should be the Railway Museum. And it looked pretty good based on their website. They don't have a Changing Places, but they say they are working towards getting one. So hopefully soon we will see that. And they do tell you where the nearest one is. I think it's down by the actual railway station. They do also have social stories. They have quiet times. They have disabled parking, and their staff are trained to recognise and respond to the sunflower lanyards. So if you have been recently and can share what your experience is like in the comments, that'd be absolutely great, letting other parents know whether it's a safe one to go to. So that's York Railway Museum. So number 9 is Wales. Just go to Wales. It's great. It is a lovely place. And the thing I love about Wales is it has some really lovely secluded beaches. Weather isn't always so great, but their beaches are beautiful, and they can be a little bit less crowded than, say, the beaches in particularly southern England. Visit Wales have an accessibility guide on their website with there's a long list of places and all the things that they offer. I was quite impressed. They clearly put quite a lot of effort into pulling together all the different attractions within Wales that you might want to visit, where you're going to get adaptations for your child's needs. They also, at the Millennium Centre in Cardiff, they do relaxed performances. So if you fancy getting a bit of arts and culture while you're in Wales but can't cope with the crowds, check out those relaxed performance times. And then on to Scotland, because we can't miss lovely old Scotland off. I do go to Scotland a fair bit, but mainly to visit friends and family. We don't tend to go to a huge number of attractions there, and so I did have to do a little bit of research into this to see what was available. And I have to say, Scotland, don't know what's going on, because not a lot was coming up. The National Autistic Society in Scotland does have a list, but going through that list, most of it is you can get a free carer's pass here. So they have Edinburgh Zoo and you can get a free carer's pass at Edinburgh Zoo, but it doesn't seem to offer much else. So I felt the showing was a bit poor from Scotland. If you are Scottish and think I've got this horribly wrong, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below. And if you are from any other part of the UK, and there are places that you would like to recommend to other families, please list them below. Let's get a bit of community sharing going on here and help other parents find the places that you've been to that you think are inclusive and accessible, and where we can have a trusted good day out. So I hope you do find something in that list that helps build some of those magical memories, and you don't have too many disasters on your summer holidays this year. And now I want to talk a little bit more about wider issues in the SEND community. We have a new education secretary. Her name is Bridget Phillipson. And I have heard that she is doing a consultation on SEND issues. Now, this has not been very well publicised, to say the least. I only found out about it because my local MP posted something on her Facebook page, and by chance somebody saw it and posted it in our local parent carer forum. Because our MP thinks posting something on her Facebook page is enough, rather than actually coming to the community directly. Anyway, don't get me started. I won't go on about that one. Also, Bridget Phillipson, I had a little look online. I can't see it on any of her sort of streams either, her platforms. So I don't know how you're supposed to find out about this, but apparently it is going on. So I would say that if you have got something to say about special educational needs provision, then you get in touch either with your local MP, or you can write to Bridget Phillipson herself at the Department of Education. Alternatively, if you don't fancy, if that just feels a little bit overwhelming, contact your local parent carer forum. I know that ours has put a response together and sent that off to our MP to pass on to the Minister for Education. So you could do it that way as well. If you're not sure how to get in touch with your MP or Bridget Phillipson, then check out the They Work For You website. That will give you all the details of how you contact a parliamentary representative. I will put a link to that website in the show notes. And in terms of what to say, obviously you will have all your own opinions, but if you are not sure where to start, these are 3 tips that I think are worth mentioning. The first one is the funding black hole that we have at the moment. We have a £3.2 billion deficit for SEND funding. And I would say that this is at the root of so many of the problems that we are facing. Councils individually have funding deficits of millions, and they're only getting bigger as more children apply for EHCPs. And this is why we are coming up against so much resistance to getting a school, special place, a school in a place in a special school. get there eventually. And it's also why you're seeing so many resistance in your mainstream schools to providing the level of provision that your child really needs to manage in that environment. So the funding issue is really important, and we need to keep pressure on because there just simply isn't enough money. The second point is about accountability and transparency. And I'm sure you've come up against this already, but there's just such a lack of transparency. I recently requested an SAR, that's a subject action request, to find out how decisions have been made to reduce the support in my daughter's EHCP at her last annual review, and there was basically nothing. And as far as I can tell, those decisions were made around the water cooler or on a fag break or something, because there's no paper trail for them at all. And that means that when I put in this SAR, nothing came back. So, it's just a real lack of transparency on why really important decisions are being made about children's provision. There's also just a lack of legal accountability. Our local authority has so many policies that are unlawful. A fellow parent the other day actually got an automatic email from the SEND Transport Department, and within that email it had a whole load of policies which she has pointed out are unlawful because they're things like blanket policies, and there's a whole range of other things that she's done a really great job of pulling those all apart, and she's put together a pre-action protocol letter which is a precursor to a judicial review. But these all things take time, and it's actually quite rare that we were able to get some written evidence of these unlawful policies. In many other aspects, they're just kind of done verbally, and then it's quite hard to prove them. So local authorities just do this, and there's so little accountability. Yes, we can go through the judicial review process, but that takes a really long time, and it involves money, and it involves finding solicitors and things like that. We did one recently. A group of us parents did a crowdfunder to issue a judicial review against our local authority, and the final judgment warned the local authority about not doing certain things, and they've just continued doing them. So this lack of accountability and lack of consequence for when local authorities break the law is a real massive problem. I would say the third area that really needs some attention is the culture wars that are starting up between, well, they're well on their way actually, between parents and schools particularly. Now, I think if you solved those first two problems, it would go a long way to addressing these culture war problems, because this is a very predictable pattern. In his latest book, Georges Monbiot says that this happens time and time again, where policies that lead to the axing of public funds for things like special educational needs, what often happens, rather than blaming the funding cuts, they blame the most vulnerable people. And in the case of special educational needs, it's us parents. So there's been a number of articles recently in the media. There was one which talked about EHCPs being a golden ticket, and excuse me, but I've had an EHCP for years and that is anything but a golden ticket. There was another one out recently in Schools Week which has attacked parent activists as coming together and bullying schools. Now, I appreciate there are probably some parents who don't behave well and do regress into harassment and bullying, and that is obviously not okay. But I would also say that often this behaviour may be stemming from parents just being completely stressed out and traumatised by a system, and at the end of the day all they're doing is trying to advocate for their child. And this article showed such a lack of understanding of where this behaviour might be coming from, and the fact that, as I say, parents are just advocating for their children. That's all they want. And it also failed to say that there has also been some pretty appalling behaviour from teachers. I've seen racism, I've seen ableism, and on both sides this is bad, and it is disintegrated and it's getting worse. Now, as I said, I think that if you solved the problems of funding and transparency and accountability, this really would ease up on that pressure. But also, we need to start seeing the senior leaders in our country calling out these articles and saying they're not okay. It's not okay. This Schools Week article, there was nothing useful in it. It was just stoking the flames of this culture war between parents and schools, and there's just no need. Basically, there's absolutely no need for stuff like that. I also understand that this journalist went into a webinar for parents and didn't declare themselves and has shared stories from that webinar, which is also completely disgusting behaviour. So we need to bring an end to this and just find some solutions, and those solutions will inevitably be when parents are better supported, they stop behaving like this in the main. So if you want to respond with those points or your own, I would really encourage you to do that. So that brings us to an end to this week's show. I hope you found it useful, and as I say, go back to those previous 2 episodes, episodes 9 and 10, if you are currently in a crisis, and I will put those free resources for managing stress and overwhelm in the show notes. I will be taking a little break now for the summer, but I am going to try and put out an episode sometime this summer to help you prepare for getting your child back into school, because I know that can be just as equally difficult as getting them out of school, especially if you have a big transition coming up, say from nursery to primary, from primary to secondary, or moving into further education. I'm not sure quite yet when I'm going to get that out. I'm kind of juggling quite a lot of things this summer. And that is why the best thing to do is to subscribe, and then you will be just notified by your podcast platform, or if you're watching this on YouTube, click that little bell and you will get a notification from when that episode gets out. And finally, if you could just leave me with a 5-star rating and a review. This will help other parents who are struggling find this podcast and get the help that they need. So give a little bit back around to others and give me that rating and review so we can help the community far and wide. I'll see you next time. If you're already finding summer really hard, maybe you're already in your summer holidays, or just the fast approach now is causing a disintegration in behaviours at home, I'd really like you to encourage you to watch this video here. There are some really easy and quick mental health hacks to see you through the summer to help you manage your stress and overwhelm. So check it out and hopefully it will be of some help.